Hi guys, Freddy here, and welcome back to another retro RPG. Well, it's actually the night before I usually shoot these things, because I'm going to have to research this week's one, because the winner is clear at this point, as it's ahead by a good 5% on the next one, is GURPS China. And, as I've mentioned before, this is still in the packing cellophane. It's not been opened. I bought it some 24 years ago, I think. 20 plus years ago, because I was buying it for a friend, or I thought I was buying it for a friend, but he actually wanted Rift's Mystic China, not GURPS China. I'd got totally mixed up. So this is still in the packing bag, has never been opened. So here we go. I'm going to tear it open. Fresh. So, GURPS China, I'm going to go away and read this up, and I'll see you on the desktop when I review it tomorrow morning. And so this is GURPS China, a 1991 sourcebook by Steve Jackson Games. Now, since I recorded that intro, I've spent maybe an hour total. I spent yesterday evening having a brief look through the book. Now, it's a 130-page book, and I've spent about an hour, as I said, so this is only a very early look at it. I definitely wouldn't consider myself to be an expert on what's in this book. I've never used it before. As I said in the intro, in fact, it spent the last 25 odd years still in its shrink wrap packing. Now, also, at 130 pages, this book claims to cover 5,000 years of Chinese history. So, as you can tell from that ratio, this is only going to be the most highest level view of Chinese history. It's not going to spend much time on it at all. And some of the claims on the back of the book, I'll point out as I go through, really would require a lot of extra work. This book isn't going to give you everything you need. But let's have a look at the back of the book. So, Empire of the Dragon. With 5,000 years of history and a quarter of the world's population, China is the perfect adventure setting, whether your campaign is magical or purely historical. With GURPS China, adventurers can escape the work gangs building the Great Wall to rebel against tyrant Shi Huangdi, foil a sorcerer's plot against Emperor Wu, fight beside the legendary three heroes to restore the empire, rescue their comrades from the savage punishments in the legalist philosophers, like sawing in half, boiling alive, or the death of 1001 cuts. Join Marco Polo on his epic journey east. Experience the intrigue and adventure of the Boxer Rebellion and Opium Wars. Even stand up for democracy at Tiananmen Square. No fictional role-playing setting can equal the scope and grandeur of China. GURPS China also includes the complete rules for translating the GURPS magic system into a mythically accurate Chinese campaign. Bestiary chapter contains traditional ghosts, spirits, and monsters of Chinese legends, including Oriental dragons. And there are rules for amazing real Chinese inventions, like the Mr. Facing Both Ways gun, the Vasta's Heaven enemy exterminating yin-yang shovel, rockets, flamethrowers, and manned kites. Finally, GURPS China even includes over a dozen detailed maps and tables for your journey through the Empire of the Dragon. And it does all of that, kind of. So let's start flicking through. Nice credits page showing it was produced in 1991. The artwork throughout it isn't the best I've seen in role-playing games, but it's all right. You know, these are decent quality artwork. We've got nice contents pages here, allowing you to find the good stuff within. Introduction, basically saying what the back of the book said, with a quarter of the world's population and 5,000 years of history. A brief introduction to GURPS and about the author. And then we're straight into life in China. So we go through everyday affairs, how the food's different, tech levels throughout Chinese history, the dress, which is standard, different proverbs, home of a well-to-do Chinese family, a nice diagram showing how a Chinese home will probably differ from those in the West. We've got religions, because obviously this is very, very different to Christianity, which a lot of Western role players are more familiar with. I won't say all, but a lot of. Mortal humans. Taoist monasteries and Taoism, showing a diagram of what one of their monasteries might be like. Very useful stuff. Moism, Buddhism, legalism, government and justice. Just giving a brief overview of how that culture is different to the one that most of us in the West are familiar with. Examination system, Chinese magistrates, skipped over civil service there. We've got laws and sentencing. The sidebars are absolutely packed in this book, detailing so much. The family, clan inheritance, clan lines, just detailing the day-to-day stuff which most of us take for granted, how things work, which are slightly different in a culture as ancient as China. What else we got? Different areas of China with population centers. A large overview map there, nicely done. We've got the calendar, so even Chinese calendars are different. Then we're on to characters. So character types: adventurers, artists, bandits, barbarians, counselors, entertainers, conscripts, magistrates, martial artists, mercenaries, merchants, ministers, and so on and so forth. Pages of different ones and how they fit into the Chinese culture. Chinese women. They were on to advantages, new advantages, disadvantages, and new disadvantages. So detailing add-ons for GURPS. This is very much the meat of GURPS and why it's such a flexible, interesting system that you can introduce so many advantages and disadvantages and build up your characters in fascinating ways. We've got skills and new skills, so kite flying, meditation. A sample character going on about social status and money. Different jobs within it. Names, helping out us in the West who basically have no idea about Chinese name structure. And very good for a book in 1991, because these days, obviously, I think I've got an app on my phone where I can generate various names for different countries, and I use that in modern-day role-playing games. So if I want a Polish character, I can easily generate a Polish or Chinese character name. But back in this day, obviously wouldn't have had access to that kind of technology in 1991. We've got various equipment, transportation, wondrous devices, weapons, which are more common there. Obviously gunpowder was invented early, so we've got cannons and the like. Rockets. Then we're on to the Chinese campaign types, interesting times, historical settings, with different time periods where you might want to set it, right up to Red China. Now, this pretty much sums up all the detail it goes into about Tiananmen Square. It advertises on the back that you could set a campaign in Tiananmen Square, but really it says Red China. Since 1950, when Mao Zedong formed the People's Republic of China, China began an ascent in world politics that made it one of the three global superpowers in the 60s. Red China offers countless opportunities for Cold War espionage adventures. In a special ops campaign, PCs might be covert rescue team sent in to bring one of the organizers of Tiananmen Square protests safely to the West. And really, that's all it says about Tiananmen Square. There's minor mention elsewhere, but for a book which advertises, yeah, you can have a Tiananmen Square campaign, really doesn't detail it much. Obviously, that was something very recent in the press then, and a thing that people knew most about China at the time. So they obviously thought it was a good advertising. We've got campaign crossovers, one of the fantastic bits of GURPS, the way you can take multiple books together and merge them. So we've got GURPS Conan, talking about the far-off lands which are based on, or strongly based on, medieval China. Espionage, fantasy, horror. Chinese legend includes an abundance of ghosts, curses, and spells. GURPS Japan, martial arts, Old West, Riverworld, with almost 25% of the Earth's population being Chinese-born. Some attempt to reconstruct the Empire of the Dragon on the Riverworld is likely, in fact, almost inevitable. GURPS Space, obviously, because China is a world superpower. There's no reason why in the future, in a science fiction setting, China wouldn't be one of the main powers in space. Something that the Firefly and Serenity series and movie had. Swashbucklers, time travel. With 5 millennia of history and advanced culture and technology, China is a veritable treasure trove for the time traveler. We've got inspirational reading, which it mentions Taipan. Now, it's been a long time since I delved into James Clavell stuff, but I thought Taipan was mainly about Japan. I think it's about trading to the east, so it might feature China, but I thought it was mainly Japanese. What else we got? So just far more details. We're onto the Annals and Myths, which goes through the time periods: prehistoric China, the time of the ancients, China in the time of the Yellow Emperor. Now, with only 130 pages, some sections it details much heavier. So we've got multiple pages on the time of the Yellow Emperor here, but there's long periods of thousands of years which are just brushed over in a couple of pages. So we've got Warring States. Then we're on to Imperial China, the August Emperor, the construction of the Great Wall. What else we got? Search for Immortality. Going through the periods of history and detailing them. Now, I don't know enough about Chinese history to know how accurate these are, but going by GURPS books in the past, they're usually fantastically researched, and I have no doubt that this is a brief but very accurate history lesson if you wanted to read through it. China's imperial expansion, the Three Kingdoms. Korea. Chang, the Journey West. Sung and the Mongol Invasion. Just going through everything important. As I said, I don't know Chinese history, so I don't know the value of these, the importance at all. China and the West. So the Mongol hordes, the Ming Dynasty. Detailing that. Manchu, the time of troubles. The Gulf of Canton. So we've got detailing historical elements which are important in the history of areas, which is fantastic. And as I said, the sidebars are of loads of value here. They go into further details about things. We've got sort of how bounties worked in that time period, which obviously doesn't really fit into the historical text, but is very important, or a fantastic role-playing feature. Japanese Army. The war years, so going through World War II, when the Japanese invaded China. Unite beneath the glorious party. And then we're up to a brief history. And as I said, the most recent occurred in summer of 1989 at Tiananmen Square. As the Cultural Revolution, the corrupt party bureaucracy infuriated student activists. The students encamped in the square for several days, demanding democratic reforms until troops were brought in from rural districts to brutally suppress the demonstrations. The Chinese still live in interesting times. So, a very brief look through the political events around that, and it kind of brushes over the absolute brutality, the number of deaths there were. And it seems strange using that image instead of trying to recreate the famous one of the protester in front of the tank, which probably would have sparked more memories in people. And then we're on to the supernatural section. So how the mythical side of China is very different to the West. So we're going through learning and using magic, available spells, new spells, just detailing a magic system which is more Eastern or more Chinese in its base. The Spirit Kingdoms. Then we're on to Bestiary. So, creatures of myth within Chinese. So we don't have kelpies or Western dragons. We have creatures which are more familiar to Chinese. Ear centipedes, Arctic moles, ghost constables, a jade woman, a Raksha, which I believe were taken into Dungeons & Dragons. They were sort of tiger men, weren't they? Tiger's decoy, white monkeys, great spirits, including dragons. And then we're on to a glossary, attempting to help you pronounce Chinese names. Again, I'm very, very Western, I'm very, very Scottish, and I pronounce things terribly. So I apologise if I mispronounce things during this. It's not out of any disrespect, it's just out of a lack of education on my side. Important terms, Chinese measurements, weapon glossary, a bibliography, so helping you learn more than they go over in this fairly brief book. And then we've got an index at the back to help you find things more easily. Now, as I said, I think GURPS China probably is a fantastically researched book. I do not have the knowledge to say how much, but GURPS products were amazingly researched. It gives a very brief overview. As I said, it's only 130 so pages long, so there's no way they can detail absolutely everything. But from a very high level, I think this would be a very useful book. If you were going to base a campaign in China, you probably want to go and research a lot more information. But if you were just going to dip in, in the time travel idea or something like that, or you were using just China as a place your characters were visiting in some other time period, then I can see this being a lot of use. It's a fantastic book, and I'm glad I actually have it now. As I said, it sat in my collection because I went to buy it, a different book for a friend, and misremembered which book he wanted, so I bought this instead. But I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I think I've put it on for quite long enough, so I'll end the video there. So, that was GURPS China. And at the other end of the poll, the game which drops out with the fewest votes was The Magic of Magnamund for the Lone Wolf role-playing game. Which kind of saddens me a bit, because Lone Wolf was very much part of my childhood. I read the game books when I was very young, when I didn't even really know Dungeons & Dragons existed. It was probably my step into role-playing. So I'm a little sad to see that one go. But that creates two spaces. So as well as the ones carrying on through, which are Bangkok's Cesspital of the Orient for Twilight 2000, Denver's City of Shadows for Shadowrun, and Strange Aeons for Call of Cthulhu, we add two new games to it. And we've got The Road Warriors, a sourcebook for Deadlands Hell on Earth, because we've covered the Cyborgs book in the past, and this is another one which fleshes out one of the character classes. And we've got Cloud Captains of Mars for Space 1889. Now this kind of breaks one of my rules, because I'd never liked having two games or two books from the same company in the poll against one another. So this is another Games Designers Workshop one, going up against the Twilight 2000 sourcebook, Bangkok's Cesspool of the Orient. But these are both older books. I know my audience absolutely love Games Designers Workshop stuff, and I couldn't resist putting it in, because I've seen some videos on Space 1889 recently, and it's piqued my interest. Anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough, so thank you very, very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does. But most of all, you guys look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.